Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 4th of February, comes to you from London. And we face a quieter week in Asia this week with Chinese New Year, the year of the pig, and last year was the year of the dog. And next year's the year of the rat. So it's quite a succession of tough years, and that's showing up in the Chinese stock market as well. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. But the dollar is rising again. It's back above the short-term cloud. Still have these downside targets hanging over us, and the medium-term picture is bearish, and the long-term picture is bullish. So we still have a pretty mixed picture for the dollar. The euro is looking weaker again short term and still bearish on all three time frames against the dollar. So weaker euro is the theme. Sterling giving up quite a lot of its gains over the last few days against the dollar, and we're back at the 131 level. We've got a downside target of 130. Medium-term downside targets. We still do have some short-term upside targets for sterling, but again, it's the uncertainty is just meaning it's very hard to call which way we'll go next. And against the euro, sterling is lower on the short-term chart as well. Short-term target reached. So again, no clear direction there, although we're bearish on that short-term chart. Against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling in bearish territory, and against the Aussie dollar also below the cloud on the short term. Bitcoin up 0.2%. Really, the story is the same every day. It still looks pretty dire on the chart. It'd be a long time before we can say that we see a new uptrend in Bitcoin. The U.S. stock market on Friday, we saw the S&P was fairly flat, but holding on to its short-term bullishness. It was a good week for the market. We see that here in the weekly candle. Taking a look at the Nasdaq, we see also that we're still holding on to the bullish trend there, and the Dow and the Russell 2000 index also. So U.S. market's still looking pretty good. The futures this morning, we see the S&P future down 0.9%, the Nasdaq E-mini down 0.09%. So 0.1%, let's say, so not really a big change from that. Hard to say which way the market will open in the US. The FTSE 100 is edging higher this morning. We're seeing up 0.0808%. So we are just nudging higher. We've got some good short-term upside targets here as well, but for the moment, all eyes on the US really. Looking at the FTSE 250, we're holding on to the gains here as well, and we'll look at the individual stocks in a minute. The DAX is down 0.33% this morning. The CAC 40 down 0.45%. So continental markets not looking as strong. Japan was up 0.9%, so looking stronger there. The Hang Seng actually also just pushing a little bit higher. Still looking pretty good on that medium-term trend recovery for the Hang Seng. China, the Shanghai market closed for Chinese New Year. The Sensex is also little change today. So in India, we're seeing little change in stocks, and the Aussie market up 0.5%. So looking better than most. Been flatlining the most last week or so, but looking like we're going to break into medium-term bullish there. Crude oil above $63 this morning, so that's bullish, and WTI up 0.27%, not quite as strong as Brent, but still looking pretty bullish. We've got an upside target here of 6%. US nat gas in the doldrums again, sitting at $2.70, and clearly bearish with downside targets to 261, 242. That's a long way from a dollar higher that we were only a few weeks back. Looking at gold this morning, we're retracing back. Gold giving up quite a lot of its gains last week. Not quite yet into bearish territory on the 60-minute chart, but looking that way. We've got a new upside target to 14.17, but we need to move above 13.25 to activate that. So it'll be interesting to see whether we can make new highs in gold. If we can go higher than the level we saw last week, that was on Thursday. If we go higher than that level, we'll activate that upside target. So it'll be interesting to see if we can do that. Silver looking more bearish on the short-term chart, just coming back below the cloud. US 10-year yields settling at 0.69% after last week's shock from the Fed, just recovering a little bit there, but the outlook very different than it was a week ago. And the Bund future, the Bund German bond market we're seeing is bullish in all three time frames. That's actual bond prices. That data was coming from Thomson Reuters Icon or Metastock Zenith if you're a private user. Now looking at the data for the individual stocks, which for this I use Yahoo, my weekly chart, my 1%, my daily, my 0.5%, and a daily with on balance volume and moving averages, and then relative to the Dow Jones index. So looking at the big performances last week, we saw Apple was up very slightly on Friday, but they had a good week. We see that showing up in the weekly candle. Looking at Alphabet, we see they're also higher, and Google and Amazon had a strong showing on the week, but actually gave up quite a bit on Friday, down 5%. So we've seen a mixed picture really. Facebook had a very strong week on their results. That's put them back into medium-term bearish territory. Maybe we saw the low point on Facebook at the start of the year. It'd be interesting to see if we recover from here. Taking a look at the Aussie market, best performer was Western Areas, up 5%. Steadfast Group up 4.8%, just breaking their long-term trend. Sierra Resources has been a feature in quite a few of the leader and laggard boards, and again we see the third best performer, but overall the trend is very down. Bore Limited 4.6% down. The shares hitting new lows, looking very bearish indeed. IOOF also looking pretty bearish. Taking a look at the Chinese market, we're closed, of course. The Hang Seng market, we saw that it was mostly up, so we did have quite a lot of green there. The Nifty 50 in India, here we see the live prices coming in from Yahoo. Titan is up 4.18%. Oil and natural gas up 3%. Reliance Industries. So we are seeing some quite good performances there. On the downside, India Bulls Housing 4.7% down, and Yes Bank, another laggard of many a day we look at, is down 3%. So still that performance not looking great. And we saw that Tokyo was up pretty strongly. Taking a look at Europe this morning, we've got the FTSE 100. Best performers in the FTSE. W.S. Morrison up 1.5%. Shell up 1.5% as well. Sage up 1.2%. And we're seeing BP. So the oils, Centrica, we're seeing oil and gas stocks looking quite strong. And another Shell here. So oil and gas looking strong this morning. Taking a look at the downside, EasyJet, Ryanair posting disappointing numbers this morning. EasyJet down 2.6% in sympathy with that. And we're seeing some of the resource stocks are lower, Rio Tinto, BHP, Glencore. And so it's not all rises, so we are still seeing some pretty big falls for some of the FTSE stocks. Looking at the 250, we've got Amigo Holdings up 4.6%, so that's looking pretty good. Vivo Energy is up as well, and that looking a little bit better on that medium-term chart. On the downside stocks, we've got Foxero. Again, we're seeing it in resource stocks, so it's quite key there, and Kia Group. And Dixon's Carphone. So we are seeing quite interesting moves across the board. Looking at the Euro stocks in Europe, we've got Wirecard up 14%. So really has been a very volatile week. Last week we saw a massive move to the downside, just recovering some of that this morning. And looking at the worst performer in Europe, we see here Ryanair down 3.7% on their numbers. So looking still in that downtrend for Ryanair, underperforming the Dow Jones index over the past year by some 25%. So it is there. European banks lower. Julius Baer, Banco Sabadell. We are still seeing Caixia Bank. Interesting, seeing a lot of the European banks heading lower and making new lows. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.